Chapter 5. Breaking the Spell. Understanding Trauma Bonding and Dependency. Why Victims Stay, the Cycle of Abuse, and How Dependency is Created. In the journey of understanding manipulative relationships, one of the most perplexing and damaging psychological phenomena is trauma bonding. Trauma bonding explains why victims of manipulation and abuse can feel such a deep attachment to their abuser, even in the face of continuous mistreatment. The cycle of abuse can entrap victims in ways that make it incredibly difficult to break free, leading them to rationalize or ignore the harm they're experiencing. In this chapter, we'll delve into the mechanics of trauma bonding, examine why victims stay in toxic relationships, and explore the psychological dependencies that are created through intermittent reinforcement and emotional manipulation. Understanding these dynamics is crucial in breaking free from abusive situations and rebuilding your sense of self. The psychological mechanics of trauma bonding. At the heart of trauma bonding is the relationship between emotional highs and lows, which is maintained through what psychologists call intermittent reinforcement. This concept, rooted in behavioral psychology, refers to the pattern where positive reinforcement is given unpredictably, alternated with periods of mistreatment, neglect, or emotional abuse. In this unpredictable dynamic, the victim becomes attached to the rare moments of affection, kindness, or approval, leading to an emotionally addictive cycle. Intermittent reinforcement has a profound impact on the brain, particularly on the dopamine system, the same system that controls reward and pleasure. When a victim receives occasional tokens of affection or approval, their brain releases dopamine, creating a pleasurable emotional response. The unpredictability of this reinforcement makes the emotional bond stronger, even though it is not consistently positive. Over time, the victim starts associating the abuser with both emotional highs and lows, which further deepens their dependency. This addiction to emotional rewards explains why victims can stay in toxic and abusive relationships for far longer than they should. Despite the emotional harm they experience, the victim becomes conditioned to expect positive moments, no matter how rare, and begins to believe that these fleeting moments are worth enduring the pain. The victim starts feeling emotionally dependent on the manipulator's approval, leading them to ignore red flags or rationalize the abuse. Stockholm Syndrome, a coping mechanism for survival. Another powerful psychological phenomenon that often emerges in manipulative relationships is Stockholm Syndrome, typically associated with hostage situations. Stockholm Syndrome can also occur in abusive or manipulative relationships. In this condition, victims develop a psychological attachment or even sympathy toward their abuser. This bond can feel paradoxical. How can someone who is mistreating you also be someone you feel loyal to? Stockholm Syndrome is thought to arise as a coping mechanism in situations where the victim feels powerless, isolated, or dependent on the abuser for emotional or physical needs. The victim may begin to rationalize or justify the manipulator's behavior, even blaming themselves for the abuse. Over time, the victim's perception of the abuser may shift, leading them to view the manipulator as a source of love or affection, even if it's intermittent and unreliable. The emotional bond becomes so strong that the victim may start to defend or even protect the abuser, despite the harm they're being subjected to. This bond is incredibly difficult to break, as the victim begins to internalize the manipulator's narrative, believing they are undeserving of love or that they are incapable of being happy without the abuser. The relationship becomes so entrenched that the idea of leaving feels like an impossibility. Real-world case study. The psychological impact of trauma bonding. To better understand the reality of trauma bonding, let's explore the case of Sarah. Sarah was in a long-term emotionally abusive relationship with her partner, who used intermittent reinforcement to maintain control. At times, he would shower her with affection, telling her how much he loved her, while at other times, he would belittle her, criticize her appearance, and manipulate her emotions. This cycle of affection, followed by cruelty, created a confusing emotional roller coaster for Sarah. Each time she felt she was reaching a breaking point, he would provide small gestures of kindness that made her feel hopeful, making it harder to leave. Over time, Sarah began to feel an overwhelming need to earn her partner's love and approval. The emotional highs were so rewarding that she convinced herself that enduring the mistreatment was worth it. She would often rationalize his hurtful behavior, telling herself that it was her fault or that she was too sensitive. Her sense of self-worth began to erode as her partner repeatedly reminded her that she was nothing without him. The dependency she developed on his approval made it incredibly difficult for her to envision life outside the relationship. Even though deep down Sarah knew that the relationship was unhealthy, her emotional attachment to her abuser prevented her from leaving. She feared that without him, she would have nothing. The toxic dependency had taken root so deeply in her psyche that leaving seemed like an insurmountable challenge. This is a classic example of how trauma bonding works. The abuser creates a psychological state in which the victim feels trapped, dependent, and unable to escape. Practical takeaways. Steps to break trauma bonds and regain independence. Breaking free from trauma bonding is not an easy task, but it is possible. Understanding how trauma bonding works is the first step toward gaining independence and healing. Here are several practical strategies that can help individuals break free from manipulative relationships and reclaim their emotional freedom. 1. Recognize the cycle of abuse. The first and most crucial step in breaking free from trauma bonding is recognizing the cycle of abuse. Understanding that the manipulator's behavior is cyclical, alternating between love and cruelty, can help victims break the emotional hold that the manipulator has over them. It's important to understand that the moments of affection or praise are not genuine love, but rather part of a manipulative strategy designed to keep the victim attached. Recognizing this cycle helps reduce the power of the manipulator's emotional manipulation. 2. Create emotional distance. While physical separation from the manipulator may not always be immediately possible, creating emotional distance is essential. This involves limiting contact with the abuser and taking steps to regain a sense of self-worth and independence. Start by seeking support from trusted friends or family members and focusing on self-care and personal growth. This emotional detachment allows you to see the situation more clearly, regain perspective, and begin the process of healing. 3. Build self-esteem. Trauma bonding often erodes the victim's sense of self-worth. To break the bond, it's vital to rebuild your confidence and self-esteem. Engage in activities that make you feel empowered and surround yourself with people who affirm your value. Journaling, practicing self-compassion, and engaging in therapy can help you counteract the negative beliefs that the manipulator may have instilled in you. 4. Seek professional help. Therapy, especially trauma-focused therapy, is incredibly valuable in helping victims of trauma bonding. Cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, is effective in helping individuals reframe distorted thoughts and beliefs that have been shaped by the manipulator. Additionally, eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, EMDR, can help process the traumatic memories and emotions associated with the abuse. A therapist can help victims address the feelings of shame and guilt that often accompany abuse and teach coping mechanisms for emotional healing. 5. Establish boundaries. Setting firm boundaries is crucial in breaking the cycle of trauma bonding. This may involve cutting off communication with the manipulator or limiting interactions to only what is absolutely necessary. Establishing boundaries protects your emotional well-being and prevents the manipulator from reasserting control over your life. Learning how to say no and stand firm in your boundaries is essential in the healing process. 6. Reconnect with your support system. Victims of trauma bonding are often isolated from their support networks, making it essential to rebuild and strengthen relationships with friends, family, or support groups. Having a strong network of individuals who understand your situation and can provide emotional support is critical to breaking the isolation that the manipulator has created. These connections offer validation, perspective, and encouragement as you navigate the process of breaking free. 7. Educate yourself about manipulation and gaslighting. Knowledge is power. Understanding the tactics that manipulators use, such as gaslighting, guilt-tripping, and playing the victim, can help you recognize and resist their efforts to control you. By learning more about manipulation and emotional abuse, victims can break free from confusion and self-doubt and gain the confidence to trust their instincts again. Conclusion: trauma bonding is one of the most powerful and insidious effects of manipulation and abuse. It creates an emotional attachment to the abuser that makes it incredibly difficult for victims to leave, even when they know they're being mistreated. However, by recognizing the cycle of abuse, distancing oneself emotionally, rebuilding self-esteem, and seeking professional help, victims can regain their independence and break the cycle of dependency. Healing from trauma bonding is a gradual process, but it is possible to reclaim control over your life and your emotions. In the next chapter, we will discuss how to rebuild your sense of self after escaping a manipulative relationship and move forward with confidence. Stay strong, stay informed, and remember, you are not alone in this journey. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on future content. Also, drop a comment below to share your thoughts or experiences. We look forward to hearing your opinions for a deeper discussion.